teach how many classes there?
No, 8.
He teaches 8 classes. My husband teaches not at the same time. So very involved at Purdue, but maybe someday when he's retired, he'll consider giving us a heads up. So, with no further ado, I'm going to introduce Preston Smith, who for 23 years has been involved with the 42nd Royal Highlanders and has been their president for the past 10 years and really has taken things up a notch.
Great. Yeah, and as Gail mentioned, we have coming up next month our Robert Burns dinner, and we have some flyers about buying tickets for that. They'll go around the room. So if you've never been, it's a great deal of fun. If you like Scotch, we've got that. If you don't like Scotch, we've got not Scotch. It's a great opportunity to enjoy some fine Scottish cuisine. Enjoy some haggis if you've never had one. Dancing, toasts, the wit of Robert Burns. It's all in all a great time. Before I get started, I'd like to introduce Taylor Sturm over here. He's our pipe major. He's going to, I think at the end of my speaking, is going to play a tune for us on the pipes, so you can get the full Scottish flavor today. So I've been, like, as Gail mentioned, I've been in the 42nd for 23 years. Taylor has been pretty close to that. Started at 8 years old. So Taylor is basically raised as a Highlander. So okay, so I'll go ahead and get started. So I'm going to tell you about the 42nd Royal Highlanders. My opening picture here is a photo of us at Fort George in Scotland, which is one of the largest fortifications in the British Isles. We were in Scotland in 2013, and I'll talk a little bit about that in my presentation. So a little bit about the 42nd. The 42nd is one of the oldest regiments in the British Army. It's the oldest Scottish regiment, and it's very famous. It was raised in the 1730s as a way to police the wild Highlands in Scotland, was turned into a regiment in the 1740s, and has distinguished itself all around the world. Its most famous battle was at Fort Ticonderoga during the French and Indian War. The 42nd valiantly attacked the French fortifications there, where they lost nearly half of their men to that assault. Today, the 42nd is known as the Black Watch. Many of you have probably heard of the Black Watch pipes and drums. They tour the world every couple of years. They were here in Indianapolis in 2012, 2013, I think. They were made famous by playing in the funeral parade for President Kennedy. The 42nd has been all over North America as well. In the 1760s, and actually 1765, so 250 years ago now, the 42nd traveled following Pontiac's rebellion from Fort Pitt all the way down the Ohio River to south of present-day St. Louis to take possession of this site here. This is Fort Deschartres. This was the seat of the French colonial government in Illinois. Out there is the farthest point away from British territory, and it was the last thing that needed to be taken over after the war was won by the British. And it was the 42nd Highlanders, led by Captain Sterling, that traveled all the way down there in just a couple of months down the river to take possession of the fort. With only 100 men. So the 42nd never quite made it to Lafayette, Indiana, but definitely set foot on the southern end of the state and all throughout our region. So the 42nd, as I said, has been in existence continuously since the 1730s, and is currently an active unit of the British Army today. The 42nd that we portray is from the American Revolution. The 42nd fought in battles from New York, New Jersey, South Carolina, was present at the surrender of Yorktown, through the World Wars, and has fought as recently as Iraq and Afghanistan alongside our own U.S. forces. Now, the 42nd Highlanders Band of Music here in Lafayette has been around since 1975, founded by Thomas Griffin, who passed away nearly 20 years ago now. Tom was an early director in the Tippecanoe Ancient Fife and Drum Corps in the 1960s, and was involved in the Feast of the Hunter's Moon for many years. And the feast is one of the places where our group performs every year. So you can see this photo here. This is probably 1978, 79. So the band was only a couple years old, kind of small, you can tell it's old because there's actually still teepees at the Feast of the Hunter's Moon there, which we don't have anymore. So since the 70s and the 80s, as both Gail and Stuart have alluded, we've started to do a lot of stuff. This is just some highlights of some of the achievements that our group has had over the last several years. Last year, we were able to perform at the U.S. Military Academy's military tattoo at West Point. 2013, we performed all over Scotland. We've been to the tip of Michigan at Mackinac City, all the way down to southern Alabama. We regularly travel from the Mississippi area, the Mississippi River around St. Louis. We go to Connecticut periodically. Performed at Fort Ticonderoga, which is quite a highlight, being able to perform at the site of one of the most historic actions of the group that we portray. So it's a great experience to be able to travel all over the country and the world reenacting history. So a little bit about the band. So I'm assuming most of you have been to the feast. You're familiar with what the 18th century. That's sliding. There we go. All right. So we portray the 42nd Highlanders from 1777. So our uniforms are what the regiment would have worn when they were in North America, in and around New Jersey and New York. So we're a very unique bagpipe band. When you see a modern bagpipe band, you'll hear the pipes, you'll hear a very distinct drum sound, clicks and clacks and stuff. Oftentimes bagpipe bands today will wear just like a vest and a tie, nothing really exciting. But we definitely go all out. We ruin all the rules of fashion. We combine plaids with stripes with checkers, but somehow it always goes. So the Scottish regiments in the British Army, they wore the same red coats that most of the English units would wear, but we were able to keep the kilts and maintain, like Stuart's wearing, a little taste of our own culture. So we carry the bagpipes. We're very unique in that we also combine fifes with our bagpipes. We're the only unit in America that has such an instrumentation. During the 18th century, the fifes and the drums were used as signal instruments. So when the troops were woken up, sent to lunch, when they moved, the fifes and drums would make a call so that the troops knew what they were doing throughout the day. Our drums are wooden rope tension drums, exactly in the style that you would have seen during the American Revolution or even as late as the Civil War. And the drummers wear bearskin hats, make them tall and more imposing than the other side's drummers. We also field color guard marches in front of our unit. They carry the King's colors of the 42nd Regiment and are accompanied by a guard of men carrying brown bess muskets. So all of our performances will feature bits of featuring all of these instruments, the pipes and the fifes and the drums, and military drill demonstrations. And another popular feature of our performance is Highland dancing. I didn't even plan that. The Highland dances were used in the British Army as a form of calisthenics. So the men would do the Highland fling or the sword dance to keep in shape. The sword dance, how many of you have seen the sword dance before? A few of you? So the sword dance, the dancer dances over a pair of crossed swords. And the legend is that it's an omen for how the battle's going to go. If the dancer touches the sword during his... If the dancer touches the sword during the course of the dance, then the legend is it's a bad sign for how it's going to go.
Just talk to the back of the room now. Don't use the mic.
Just holler.
Bounce it off the back wall.
All right, you got it. I'll use my talking over bagpipes voice.
There you go.
So over the last 20 years or so, we've produced several recordings. Our first one in 1996, here on the bottom left, is our debut CD. Sold that out in the 90s. So we went a long time without having recordings on the market. And within the span of 4 or 5 years, we released 2 completely different recordings. In 2009, our No Matter What the Season recording, and then right before our trip to Scotland, a completely new recording to immortalize the show that we played for that trip. So we are active all throughout the community, not just at the Feast of the Hunter's Moon. Sometimes if you're out late on evenings like St. Patrick's Day, you might see us appearing for some of the revelers. We're at DT Kirby's here. For some reason, he likes to use the space on top of the bar for the musicians. that always makes an impression. But we're also very active educationally. As history and arts education are our key mission. We were excited this was a year or so ago, to be able to work with the Harrison High School marching band, who were able to get some. Oh, this is better? Oh. All right, technology. Harrison was able to get some grant funding from a couple different sources to rehabilitate their old rope tension drums that they used in their marching band up until probably 15 years or so ago. So our drummers teamed up with a drumline from the Harrison band, rebuilt the drums, taught them how to maintain them, and helped them learn how to play them, which was very exciting, being able to do that. Many of the folks in the band are graduates of the Harrison High School marching band, so it was great to be able to see those old rope tension drums get back onto the field. We regularly do school presentations for elementary school age kids in particular. I think this was Klondike Middle School, I think it was. We did this last year. The students get a chance to see all the instruments that we play. We teach them what the bagpipes are, what we wear, and what they use for the fifes and the drums in the 18th century. And also for church groups. I think this was Lafayette Urban Ministries resident camp last year, doing basically the same type of thing. So it's great to go out there and teach the students about what we do. So a little bit about the band. We have actually, the band is all male. We have a wide variety of people professionally. So in our day-to-day lives, believe it or not, there's not a lot of call for being a professional bagpiper. So we do have to keep haggis on the table. We have several IT professionals, and tradesmen, accountants, many engineers. I think we have 6 or 7 engineers in the band. So who knew that engineering was a way to find bagpipers? Many of us work at Purdue or graduates of Purdue. We have several of our dearly departed band members have been college professors, judges, police officers. Everybody is very active in the community. We have a number of veterans, one currently serving lieutenant in the Army, 4 Eagle Scouts, and 6 of our band alumni have served in the U.S. Army's Old Guard Fife and Drum Corps, which is the escort to the president, the performance ceremonies all over Washington, D.C. So that's quite an honor for us being out here in the frontier, so to speak. So the Scottish Society, in addition to the pipe band, we have the society to bring together people with interest in all things Scottish and hold events for the culture. The Burn Supper we mentioned already, and I'll speak a little bit more about that. But we'll hold whiskey tastings periodically. Here a couple of years ago, we partnered with 9 Irish Brothers to have a Scotch tasting. Somebody came in from the distilleries and talked us through all the various things. We have a golf outing every summer for the last 4 or 5 years, which has been a lot of fun. It's a great way to do probably the most Scottish of activities out there in the summertime, and raise a little bit of funds for our organization. We talked about the Feast of the Hunter's Boon, and Gail obviously is out of the feast, but in addition to performing, the 42nd also has a Fourth for Variety booth. So we sell food out there. So how many of you guys have had a Fourth for Variety before? And we got a few fans. So the Fourth for Variety is actually one of our biggest fundraisers. We usually bring in about 50, 75 volunteers over the course of the weekend. Work at the booth here, cooking, serving Fourth for Varieties. So if you've never had a Fourth for Variety, there's a picture of it there on the left. It's a meat pie. It's a spiced beef and a little bit of potato and onion baked in a pastry. It's one of the top selling food items out of the feast. Up there in the same tier with the pork chops and the buffalo burgers and the apple dumplings. So we have a great time selling those Fourth for Varieties and trying to keep them stocked for all the hungry feast goers. The Burn Supper is probably our biggest cultural activity. So it celebrates the birth of Robert Burns, whose birthday is January 25th. This year the supper, as you can see on the materials that are passed around, is on January 23rd. We've had the event out at the trails out near Battleground for the last 4 or 5 years. It's a great venue for doing this sort of thing. So if you've never been, the information is there on the handout. Get a group of friends to come. It's a great way to get out of the house on a cold winter evening, do a little bit of dancing, hear some music, and just have a good time. a little shot of the whole room there. It's kind of dark on the projector. But I want to spend a few minutes here and tell you about our trip to Scotland. This was a kind of our aspirational goal for many years in the band, and it wasn't until the 2010s that we were really able to put it all together and make it happen. So this is kind of the group shot of everybody in the castle, everybody in the tour standing in front of Edinburgh Castle. We brought about 49 people on the trip, so we had 20 band members that came to perform, and then associated family and friends, and then 5 or 6 people just from the community that just wanted to come along and support the band and go see Scotland with friends. This is the band performing at the regimental headquarters of the Black Watch. Our trip coincided perfectly with the left half of the picture there. You can see they've expanded their castle and museum, and had just finished a 1.5 year long multi-million-pound renovation of the Black Watch Museum, and this was right at the grand reopening. So we were able to perform there at the grand reopening, and you can't really see it on the projector here, but everyone in the background with a red hackle on their hat is a veteran of the Black Watch Regiment. So for many of us, this was a real highlight of our trip, getting to perform in front of the people who actually served in the group that we portray. We performed at a Royal Highlanders show. We were honored to be reviewed by Princess Anne, who was present at the show there. Here I am trying not to say anything embarrassing to her. She was impressed at how many people we brought over from the U.S. And I told her, we wouldn't miss it. This was a big thing for us. And she kind of looks at me and she says, "Doesn't everybody have jobs?" Our drummers are pictured here standing in front of a painting of the 42nd Regiment in 1758. We were able, before we went over there, to record the drum beatings, the calls that I spoke of for telling the troops when it's time to do things. They recorded the sounds of what they would have been for like an interactive touchscreen exhibit in the newly renovated museum. So that's great. So if you happen to go over to the Black Watch Museum today, you can hear the music of our organization playing there in the museum. Here's a picture of Taylor actually talking to a piper that we met at an event. He was a World War II bagpiper, and his teacher was actually the guy that wrote one of the tunes that we were playing in that show. So that was a lot of fun. He was inspecting everybody's pipes and giving some critique. We visited Stirling Castle. We saw the site where the 42nd was first mustered as a regiment, from basically going from the National Guard, so to speak, and made a unit of the Army on this spot where this monument stood. And here we are marching into Edinburgh Castle. We got to see all sorts of back of the scenes thing here. Our drummers in the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders Museum. This drum was captured in the 1800s from the Russians during the Crimean War. They treated us to tea. You can see how civilized and fancy we look with our teacups. Saw the Culloden battlefield, which was really great. We were driving up through Scotland that day. The rain was pouring down. It was dark and horrible and dreary. And we pull up and park there. And kind of like you can see in the picture, the clouds broke. It got kind of just misty and cool, and really kind of gave it that the kind of vibe you would expect at the battlefield like that. But believe it or not, going to Scotland was not all work. We got to experience all of the fine establishments around Scotland, see whiskey distilleries. The larger families got to come and enjoy it. So I'm sure we should give those 2 girls a little quiz and see how much they remember of it. We met the former pipe major of the Black Watch here in one town. Gave him a cap badge to commemorate us getting to meet him. So we've actually remained in touch with him. So it's great making some friends on the trip. And even actually at this stop in the visit, Taylor proposed to his now wife, which was very exciting. So I don't think she's going to forget that trip to Scotland. And the girls had fun too. So what's next? What is our organization going to do? I think the main thing is we're going to continue to serve the community. We'll be seeking out ways to present the history of the unit and about the American Revolution and the instruments that we played to school kids. We want to grow the pipe band. We're always finding people who are interested in learning the pipes, the drums, or the fife, and want to perform. You know, I heard a recurring theme in jokes here about people who like to hear themselves play. I tell you what, we like that too. If we find an opportunity to go out there and and be the center of attention, so to speak, we love to perform. So, but most importantly, teaching the fifers and drummers of tomorrow. Several in the group teach the Voyager Ancient Fife and Drum Corps, which is a group of fifers and drummers that age from 10 to 18. So we teach them fifing and drumming today so that they can grow into preserving history tomorrow. But since we like to perform, we got to think, what's our next act? We've been to Scotland, we've been to New York in the South. Where do we go next? Colonial Williamsburg has been talked about. Nova Scotia has all sorts of great bagpiping tradition. Taylor was just up there recently, and I think we might have some opportunities there. Military tattoos are always popular for bagpipe bands, and there's some great domestic ones here in Estes Park, Colorado, or in Norfolk, Virginia. But most importantly, as a bagpipe band, we've been to Scotland once. We better go again. So we're starting to talk about how we can fundraise and prepare ourselves for our next trip to Scotland, hopefully in 2018 or 2019 or so. So with that, I think Taylor's gonna play a quick tune on the bagpipes, and I don't know if there's time for questions or what you guys like to do. I'd be happy to answer anything. I don't think I'm gonna have to worry about the microphone for Taylor here.
Is the skirt in length important? In other words, as you shorten in your life, as all people seem to do you have to have the hem cut up on your...
Probably, yeah. The kilt usually goes right above the kneecap. So yeah, if you shorten or if it shrinks, you'll oftentimes have to readjust it. Because you don't want to go in past your knee. Then it becomes a dress.
So I will play a quick tune for you guys, and hopefully it's not too loud for you. It might be kind of loud in this room. So.